Hi guys, I thought I'd like to show you a game I played on Chess, and I wasn't signed in, so it was an anonymous account. And my favourite opening with white is the Halloween Gambit, and I've learnt the first 10 or 15 moves by book. So I was white. I started off e4. My opponent played e5. So potentially the Gambit's on. I moved out a knight. My opponent moved out a knight. I brought out my second knight, and my opponent did. We've got the four knights game, and the Halloween Gambit is on. So I go for it. He accepts it. Now I know, and my whole aim was to run down his clock, so I was pre-moving all the time. I know you harass this knight now with the pawn. There we go. He retreated. You can jump one of two ways, by the way. The knight could jump to this square or that square. He went to this square, so I then harass the same knight with a pawn. He moves, and I harass it again. He moves, and now I harass the other knight with a pawn. He retreats, and now I advance the d-pawn. I expected him to take, so I already pre-moved a recapture with my pawn, and that's what happened. Then I expected the queen to move out. It did, and I pre-moved my knight move. At this point, we're actually up. I'm up 0.9. I expected the king to move because the fork is on now, and that would win the rook. So I expected his king to shift across. It did, and I knew the correct response is to harass the knight with the pawn. So I did. He moved the knight, and I also knew the next response is to harass the knight with the bishop. He protected the knight with the pawn, and now I didn't know quite what to do. But I had a feeling I wanted to move my queen up so that my king could castle queenside. So I did that manoeuvre. We're still winning at this stage. He threatened my knight, and we've got about a 30-second clock advantage at this point. 2 minutes 13 to 2 minutes 41. And I thought about it a bit, and I decided to harass the queen with the bishop, which is the best move. He moved the queen, and there's not many places it can go. It can't go there or there. Can't go on any of these angles. Can't go there. In fact, it's only got one square. Now I missed the killer move, which is a check with the queen. He would have to move the king here. Then you'd fork him with the knight, and he'd have to either give up the queen or return, and then I would capture the rook with check. That was the killer blow. I missed it. I put the knight there, and now I'm losing. Halloween Gambit games are very sharp, and you can go from winning to losing in a single move, from plus 1.2 to minus 2.4 in a single move. I knew he could move the rook, and then I didn't have a plan. He moved the rook. Now, I didn't want to move the knight here, it would be captured, or here, and this pawn is under attack because it's being hit by the queen and the bishop. So I decided to get the knight out of there, but I knew I was hanging this pawn. He took the pawn, but he should have taken with the bishop. He took with the queen, which is a huge mistake because you can throw in a check. And it goes like this. Check. He either has to give up well, that doesn't even work, giving up the queen. I just take it. So he has to go here. Then you fork the rook and the queen. and he can't take the knight because I would retake. So that's a big problem for him. But we didn't have that in the game. He took the pawn. Oh, I did check him. Sorry, I did check him. He moved his king. I then castled. That was the mistake, because it allows his queen to get out of the way. But he moved his knight, and that's a disaster. Plus 7.7 for us now, because we've got the check, winning the queen. But I didn't see that. I saw this move, which is bad. I'm now minus 2.8. He took the knight, the best move. I took the rook, which is not the best move, and I'm now minus 5.7. But look at the clock. 1 minute 13 for him, 1 minute 55. With all my pre-moves, I've got a huge clock advantage. He exchanged queens, then he threatened my bishop, and I decided to get out and take the knight. He recaptured. Now I wanted this rook to come free, so I moved the bishop. I can't move it here or here, so I moved it to d3, allowing the capture if he wants it. He moved his bishop out, and I didn't see this potential pin. I moved a pawn. I wanted to block the knight coming from here. He pinned me. I thought, oh no, game's lost. And I protected this pawn. He took my rook, and I took his bishop. Now I'm minus 5.8. He advanced his pawns. I moved my bishop so that it can't be captured, because I wanted to keep as many pieces on the board as possible. He moved his king, and I decided to get my king. No, I moved my rook in line with his king. He moved his rook in line with my king. I decided to get my king active, so I moved it up the board. He threatened my bishop, and I brought it all the way back. He moved his bishop out. We're still minus 5.9, minus 6 now, but I've got a healthy 50-second advantage on the clock. I advanced my king. He threatened this pawn, so I protected it. He moved his king, and I advanced into his territory. He brought his rook down, and I threatened his bishop. He's got 30 seconds left, but I'm minus 10.2. He moved his bishop out of harm's way, and I threatened this pawn on d5. It's being attacked by the bishop and the rook. He threw in a check. I didn't want to go into this territory, so I retreated. He pushed his rook back, protecting this pawn now. So I threatened the rook with a pawn. He found this check, and I thought that might be checkmate. But actually there's one square I can go. He then takes a pawn, leaving this pawn vulnerable. I took with the bishop, which is not the best move. He moved his knight, but he's only got 5 seconds. So I thought at this stage I'm going to flag him. I moved the bishop, a discovered check. He moved his king. I took this pawn. He took my bishop. I took his bishop. The game's lost at minus 4.2, but he's got 0.8 of a second. He only managed to get a few more moves in. He moved his rook, threatening my pawn. I moved my king. He took my pawn. I took his pawn. He moved his rook, and I think that's the last of it. He had 0.1 of a second left. I moved my rook. He managed another capture. I threw in a check and he ran out of time. So it was a really fun game, completely lost at this stage for me, but time is a resource, and well, you know, I blitzed it out. Hope you enjoyed it and see you later.